So many awesome things to think about, and again, we see so many people writing and taking notes, and all these kind of tweetable moments, and it's just more kindling for the flames, more kindling for the flames. So we've got another fantastic speaker coming up. After that, we're going to have lunch. Anybody who had let us know about any allergies or food preferences, vegetarians, vegans, all that, you should all be taken care of. If for some reason you don't find the meal that you're looking for or whatever, they'll find it for you. So everybody, we know about all that stuff. And then I've got a couple other quick notes for you afterwards, but for right now, I just want to keep moving with Eric Siegel. We're going to get it for folks who have been thinking about big data and all the implications. Obviously, a huge topic right now. Predictive analytics is something that really plays in extremely nicely to that, and the expert on predictive analytics is Eric Siegel, so we'll go ahead and introduce him. Eric Siegel, PhD, is the best-selling author of Predictive Analytics, the power to predict who will click, buy, lie, or die. He's also the founder of the Predictive Analytics World Conference Series and the executive editor of Predictive Analytics Times. A former Columbia University professor who used to sing to his students, Eric is also the star of the world's first geek rap video about predictive analytics. Eric has been featured in and appeared on a wide range of media, including Bloomberg TV and radio, Fox News, NPR, Business Week, the Financial Times, Forbes, Fortune, Harvard Business Review, the Huffington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. Today at Brand ManageCamp, Eric will be showing us how we can use predictive analytics to deliver on the promise of big data. Please welcome Eric Siegel.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. So predictive analytics. Prediction as a capability is the holy grail for targeting marketing, for product recommendations and all other kinds of personalization endeavors on your website and otherwise, as well as many other operational decisions that directly inform your bottom line and are fundamental to brand. But isn't prediction supposed to be impossible? It's certainly very difficult. The only thing certain is uncertainty. Weather can only be predicted so well. Human behavior no less challenging to predict. How do we put credibility on a field that has the audacity to call itself predictive analytics? So that's a credibility question I'll address partway through the presentation. So as you just heard in the intro, just a couple quick slides about my work. I'm the founder of the conference series Predictive Analytics World. They're 10 a year, the leading cross-vendor event focused on predictive analytics and its commercial deployment. Also the executive editor of Predictive Analytics Times. Check out predictiveanalyticstimes.com for lots of great content, articles, and full-length session videos from the conference series from a few of those events available at no cost. And I'm also the author of this book, Predictive Analytics. Now, the subtitle of the book actually provides an informal definition of the field. So it's Predictive Analytics, the power to predict who will click, buy, lie, or die. I will provide a little bit more rigorous definition in a bit, but let me give a quick elevator pitch for the book, which, first of all, you can receive the audio book at no cost if you email me, and I'll provide my email here later. Just mention the event and say audiobook. And I've got a couple copies with me, and we'll do the last couple tweets to get the copies if you want. They're also selling at the bookstore. I'll do a book signing. So here's my elevator pitch. I'm a former academic. This is a conceptually complete intro. It's used as a textbook, 35 universities or more, but it doesn't read like a textbook. I wrote it kind of like pop science, entertainment value, anecdotally driven, accessible to all readers. Last 3 chapters, despite that, are advanced topics many experts are new to. And finally, if you want to tweet, Predict Analytic is my Twitter handle, but if you want to compete for the copies of the book I've got with me, the paperback, you need to use Brand ManageCamp. Okay, so I'm going to introduce predictive analytics, describe basically how it works in the sense of how it delivers value, focus mostly on marketing examples, which divide largely into two areas, which is targeting outreach to acquire new customers or targeting retention offers towards those customers most at risk of leaving. I'll look under the hood a little bit. We'll see what kind of data it needs, what a predictive model looks like, and I'll show a bunch of examples, some mini case studies and such. Okay, so what is predictive analytics? How many people here are familiar with Nate Silver? Like half, I guess. A little bit less than half. So there's no better known prognostic quant. He's the most famous person of prediction, the most celebrated statistician, gained most of his fame from correctly predicting for the last presidential election 4 years ago the outcome for each individual state. So people say, is that predictive analytics? Did he use predictive analytics? Did that count? But actually, the answer is no, but the Obama campaign did use predictive analytics to help win the election. So in a nutshell, this really helps distinguish between the idea of forecasting, which is certainly quantitative prediction, versus what I'm discussing, predictive analytics. What Nate Silver did is forecasting. So for a state like Ohio, what's the overall aggregate trend or outcome across all voters going to be? Whereas what the Obama campaign analytics team did is predictive analytics, and the difference is that it makes a prediction for each individual voter. Okay, and not what I put up here, what you might expect the outcome, the voting behavior, will they vote for Obama versus Romney, but actually a more advanced form of predictive analytics called persuasion modeling, where they predict for each individual, can we persuade or influence the voting outcome for this individual with campaign contact, such as a knock on the door, direct mail, a phone call. All these decisions per individual to drive voting behavior, same exact concepts to drive commercial buying behavior. So in a nutshell, Nate Silver competed very publicly, he was on all the talk shows, to win at forecasting the outcome of the 2012 presidential election. Doing the same now, you can see his forecasts online. While simultaneously, very secretly, the Obama campaign analytics team competed to win the election itself. So which is more powerful? So this defining characteristic of predictive analytics being per individual empowers your organization not just to predict the future, but to influence it, because each of those per individual predictions directly inform treatment or other outgoing decisions, the way you're behaving towards each individual. And indeed, we have every reason to believe that Hillary for America is employing the same special flavor of predictive analytics to target their campaign efforts, right? This is the most visible marketing campaign, a presidential campaign, right? You're trying to sell a candidate. In fact, just this morning, Scientific American published an article I wrote about Hillary for America using that on their website's blog, which is easy to find if you want to learn more about that. So it's a nice, basically, marketing case study. More generally, right, we're seeing in marketing and beyond that predictive analytics is extremely valuable. It's value proven over and over again across so many case studies. So much so that people are having the gumption to say that this geeky field is sexy. There's a pretty famous article in the Harvard Business Review, Data Scientist, the Sexiest Job of the 21st Century, written by Thomas Davenport, who actually wrote the foreword to my book, and DJ Patil, who subsequently has been appointed by President Obama as the first US chief data scientist. So, I mean, I consider these guys very handsome. I'm sure you agree, but sexy is profession. You know, I kind of always assumed that was reserved for a firefighter, right? I don't know. Maybe it's the hard hat. This is a picture of me. Why are you laughing? Like, what? Why are you laughing? No, I'm dressed up as a data miner for Halloween. So, to delve into this question of whether data science is sexy, we produced a music video, the best ever educational predictive analytics rap music video at predictthis.org, just 3.5 minutes. Definitely, come on, people, you got to check this out. This is not only a legitimately educational rap about the topic area, substantive in its content, but also the video itself explores that ironic theme of what it means for data scientists to be sexy. That may be a controversial assertion, but one thing's clear, the value you get from predictive analytics is sexy. So here's our definition. Predictive analytics is technology that learns from experience. And by experience, I mean data. So, how many people here get excited when they think about data? A lot of you, like more than half. It's pretty good. Represent, right? Awesome. This may be a biased sample. The fact is, many people think data is kind of a boring thing. In fact, the word data is probably a deal killer at cocktail parties, right? Something I've determined from personal experience. I have the data. Get it? But that's because generally people aren't aware or don't recognize that data is not just an arcane bunch of ones and zeros. It's a recording of things that have happened. So it encodes the collective experience of your organization, from which it's then possible to apply this type of analytical technology, the number crunching, to learn from it how to render predictions for each individual. So each individual, the output of a predictive model is a number for each individual, which often is in terms of a probability. The higher the number, the higher expected chance that individual will click, buy, lie, or die, as in the title of my book, commit an act of fraud, cancel as a paying subscriber, any kind of outcome or behavior for which there's data to analyze and learn about, and for which there would be value to predict to target your organization's behavior, its outgoing actions and treatments, driving those decisions more effectively over many examples, such as whether to contact a customer with a marketing offer or a retention offer. Those are the main examples I'll cover today. So in a nutshell, the data comes in from the left, and this core technology, the number crunching, called predictive modeling, derives from that data with certain kind of trial and error process. What I show as a golden egg in these slides. So that's the predictive model. That's the thing that's been learned from data. And its job is now to render those predictions. So one individual at a time, you take the input pertaining to that one individual, now coming in from the left, and that predictive model outputs the predictive score. So for example, you're looking at an individual, you're saying, hey, if I expend the cost of contact, if I target this individual for marketing and send them this brochure, what are the chances that tomorrow there'll be a positive outcome, they're going to buy our sneakers? So, the credibility question I brought up. Nobel Prize winning physicist Niels Bohr is famous for having said that prediction is very difficult, especially when it's about the future. And Jay Leno, how come you never see a headline like psychic wins lottery? Legitimate question. So the bottom line here, the thing that makes it credible that this audacious claim of prediction has some actual merit and value is really simple. You just don't actually need to predict accurately to provide value. Predicting better than guessing is generally more than sufficient to drive values in rendering mass-scale operations over many individuals more effective. So let's look at a quick back-of-the-napkin arithmetic example of that. So let's say we're targeting marketing to these 1 million prospects. If we had no basis for discriminating one from the other, and we were just going to do a mass mail across all 1 million of them, let's just do the arithmetic to see what our profit would be. If there's a 1% response rate, that means out of this 1 million that we contact at $2 each, so we spend 2 million contacting everybody, and then the 1%, the 10,000, positively responds. We spend 2 million, and then for 10,000 we get 220 each. We get 2.2 million back, so our bottom line profit is 0.2 million, $200,000. So how much better would that profit be if we targeted that outgoing mail, direct mail, with a predictive model. So let's say we take a prior mail, or probably more likely take a small sample, let's say 40,000 of these, and we test mail to them. And then we wait and find out what the results are, the outcomes for each individual. We give them some time to either respond or not respond, and then we've got a whole bunch of yes/nos. That's history. That's the experience from which to learn. That's the training data that's input to the predictive modeling process. It produces the golden egg. We use it to score all 1 million of these, rank them from highest to lowest, most likely to respond if contacted. And then if we take the top quarter, top 25%, 250,000, if our predictive model is working pretty well, maybe we get what's called a lift of 3. So within that hot pocket, that top quartile, there's a 3% overall response rate rather than a 1%. And if we use that to target our marketing, so we only market the top 25%, which means essentially we've made a million yes/no decisions, right? And we suppress the other 75% from the mail, therefore saving 75% of our marketing cost. We also forsake all those responses from the tail, the bottom 75%, but the majority are clustered in this top hot pocket of 25%. The same arithmetic I did a second ago will show you that the bottom line profit now skyrockets by a factor more than 5 to $1.15 million. Such a dramatic improvement just from more intelligently targeting the mail that I paid my graphic designer, who I pay by the hour, to draw the star explosion thing to express how big an impact we're having here, predictably. But wait a minute. Actually, this predictive model really stinks. It's not accurate from a layperson's use of the word. I don't have high confidence over any one individual. They're definitely going to buy. There will be a positive outcome for that individual. It's a 3% response rate. But the value is unquestionable, so we could alternatively define predictive analytics as a skunk with bling. You're not writing that down? Or? So I call that the prediction effect. A little prediction goes a long way. Predicting better than guessing, generally, at least oftentimes, more than sufficient to drive mass-scale operations more effectively and give a dramatic boost to the bottom line. So let's talk about how it actually works and what the data looks like in the model. So let's turn to the movie Kung Fu Panda. How many people here saw the movie Kung Fu Panda? Oh, yeah. And how many people saw the movie Kung Fu Panda and don't have kids? No. We should hang out. Yeah. So the old wise turtle, voiced by Dustin Hoffman, said, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. So take a slightly less punny and sentimental look. Hard-nosed, what do we have as a resource today in the present that helps us predict this ultimate unknown, the future, right? We would love to know the outcome for this individual tomorrow. What we do have in pocket are two things with the same relationship to one another, but are both in the past, and therefore we know the answer. And that's what we're going to leverage. That's the data. So we know that for this individual, we contacted them yesterday, and then we waited around. Earlier today, we found out there was a positive outcome. They actually purchased the sneakers. So there's no prediction needed. This is a learning case, a learning example corresponding to one row of data. So everything on the left side of the dotted line is what we knew at the time that we made the treatment decision. You know, at the time we would have liked to be able to predict the outcome. So the person was male, lived in California, had made at least 10 purchases, et cetera. Any and all demographic and behavioral data that may have value to inform the prediction. And then we waited around, and later on in time, we found out that the outcome was yes. So these are two different points in time, but they're both in the past. And if you make one row of data like that per individual, and make a whole bunch of rows, you get a table, and that's called the training data. So that's the form and format that you need to get your data in with enough positive and negative examples. And that's the data requirement. In fact, the majority of hands-on technical effort and bottlenecks and time spent on a predictive modeling project is in getting your data, is not on the rocket science part, the part where you're actually producing the model, but just getting your data in this form and format. All the predictive analytics software needs you to do that. That's the real bottleneck, that's the challenge. And what I've described here is most of what you need to know conceptually about those data requirements. So it's a list of examples. And then you do the analysis. We're going to go through a few kind of interesting insights you might get. So for example, if you go to a bar, you're a worse credit risk. So Canadian Tire actually issues credit cards and then looks at how people use their credit card with regard to whether they're paying their credit card bill on time. And if you're observed going to a drinking establishment, you're actually more likely than average to miss repeated credit card payments, worse credit risk. But if you're observed buying the little felt pads that go on the bottom of your chair so you don't scratch the floor, how many people here have bought those little felt pads that help you prevent? Oh, good. Yeah, you guys got it together. I've never bought those, actually. I know. But maybe I will. I'm not mature enough. I'm working on it. In any event, you guys are better credit risks. If you're observed going to the dentist, you're a better credit risk. If you're observed, this is not from the same company, but if you're observed liking curly fries on Facebook, you're more likely to be more intelligent. Uber actually did an analysis and showed that neighborhoods or areas in San Francisco that exhibit higher rates of certain crime have a higher demand for Uber rides. Now, not necessarily because the criminals are riding, but because they considered that a surrogate for non-residential population. Those happen to also be the neighborhoods where there were more people that don't actually live in that neighborhood. So this is the big in big data. Big data is just a grammatically incorrect way to say a lot of data. But what is big about it is the excitement in that it has predictive value. It is predictive. If we can learn to listen to it correctly, interpret it, put it into that form and format, do the analysis, you're going to learn it's going to speak. Dental patients miss fewer payments, whatever it is. So I call this the data effect, which is simply that for all intents and purposes, data is always predictive. You can sleep well at night knowing that the data you've accumulated will have that value, will provide these types of insights. A bunch of these I just show one factor or one variable insights. And you're going to get those, and then the model, the golden egg, puts them together so that you, for one individual, you consider in concert everything you know about that individual to make as good a probability or prediction as possible. And then when you go to, one side comment I almost forgot to make, those types of insights often get interpreted incorrectly because, as I'm sure you've heard the phrase before, correlation does not necessarily entail causation. So for example, to illustrate that, you could easily find in analysis of the data a correlation, a link, between consumption of ice cream and shark attacks. And you might say, well, what? Is that, why would that be the case? You'll see this in the data. Why would increased consumption of ice cream correspond with an increased consumption of humans by sharks? So one possible causative explanation for that is that when you eat the ice cream, it makes you taste better. So you eat the ice cream, the shark eats. Could happen. But the more generally accepted explanation, and when you're trying to explain things, it's a causal thing. It's a causal explanation. Why are these things linked? And the reason is probably seasonal, right? Which is that when the weather's better, you're more likely to go swimming. Also, people are eating ice cream more. So this is a perfect example where you're seeing these two things that are linked in data. They do correspond. You find a correlation when you do the analysis. Therefore, the value's there. One helps predict the other. But be careful what your mind wants to do as far as interpreting these things, because in this example, one of these factors does not even indirectly cause the other in either direction. Okay, so we put these factors together and we deploy the predictive models, and it helps target marketing. So these three quick little examples are the value that organizations get in comparison to not using predictive modeling. So by introducing predictive modeling and predictively targeting their marketing and direct marketing, First Tennessee Bank was able to lower direct mail costs by 20%, which resulted in a 6-fold improvement in the ROI of their marketing campaigns. Retailer Target does indeed target their marketing, and they reported improving that by 20% with predictive models. Premier Bank Card, major credit card issuer in the United States, reduced mailing costs by $12 million. And the same thing applies for not only targeting marketing, but targeting sales effort. It's very much the same thing when we move from marketing to sales. The main difference is that what we're targeting isn't a direct mail, but rather a salesperson's effort and time. So there's more of a manual component to it, but the value proposition is the same. How should we target that limited resource? What's the historic data look like? The same core technology applies. We're in this information overload type situation. Too many leads to contact. How do we prioritize that? The same concept. Here's a few examples from people targeting their Salesforce efforts, as Obama did, and we believe Hillary for America is doing, with a predictive model. So paychecks decreased by 40% number of phone calls needed to secure a sales meeting. Many of the large universities, including Walden University, score their prospects. They're trying to acquire these new registrants, of course. When it existed, Sun Microsystems gave this type of result. They doubled the number of leads per contact. So it's just increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of whatever operation it is, whether it's sending somebody a mail or taking manual time as a salesperson. So a bunch of other examples. I'm not going to go through these. I threw them on here. You're going to get the PDF from my slides, which actually includes, with this slide and many other slides, additional information like links and citations for additional reading or about specific case studies and such. So far I've been talking about making decisions between active and passive treatment. Right? So like Shakespeare's Hamlet, to contact or not to contact. That is the question. But in many cases, the treatment decision you're making isn't between whether or not to contact, but between two active treatments. Which product to recommend, which web landing page to show when somebody lands on my website, which price to quote, many, many cases like that. And when you're in that type of situation, where you're choosing between different treatments, you can actually look to your own personal dating life to help inform what it means to analytically optimize those marketing treatment decisions. Or conversely, next time you're out on a date, you can look to analytical optimization of marketing to help improve your performance on the date, right? Because this is a sales call. You're not there for the food. You're selling yourself. You're both the director of marketing and the product. So it's important to predict with each outgoing treatment decision or message or copy which is going to lead to a positive outcome, which will lead to a negative outcome. So how many people saw this movie Groundhog Day? Oh yeah, almost everybody, yeah. If you didn't see it, you've got to see it. It's so funny. Bill Murray is stuck in this supernatural situation, reliving the same day over and over again, and he hates it. He can't get out of this loop, and he's in his own personal hell until he recognizes that this scenario actually provides for him the superpower to test different marketing treatments on the same prospect under exactly the same circumstances and see which leads to positive outcome. Right, so let's watch a 47-second clip from the movie Groundhog Day.
You weren't in broadcasting and journalism?
Mm-mm. Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
What a waste of time. I mean, for someone else, that would be an incredible waste of time. It's so bold of you to choose that. It's incredible. You must be a very, very strong person. Yeah? You weren't in broadcasting or journalism, anything like that?
Believe it or not, I studied 19th century French poetry.
La fille qui j'aimerais sera comme bon vin, que c'est bon fiera un peu chaque matin.
You speak French.
Oui.
Do not try that at home. So the sad news is that we can't try this at home because in real life there's no do-overs. Right? By definition, the only recourse is to predict a priority, which is most likely to lead to a positive outcome. So in marketing, there are two main applications of predictive analytics. The one I've been speaking about most is targeting outreach, sales, and marketing efforts, normally in order to land a sale or acquire a new customer. And the other main one is targeting retention. So predicting which customer is at risk of defection, who's leaving. Retention efforts are so critical in marketing. You know, it's often considered much less expensive to retain existing or recently prior customer than to acquire a new one off the street. And you can imagine your customer base as this balloon, and the constant acquisition of customers is air flowing in from the left, and then the attrition, the loss of customers, is the air leaking out on that nozzle on the right. If we could squeeze that nozzle on the right just a bit, how much more quickly would this balloon be expanding? That's the growth rate of your customer base. But convincing someone who's on the way out to stay is expensive, often in the form of some kind of a discount or free product or what have you. It's not something that you can provide to your entire customer base. So again, by definition, prediction is the only recourse to optimize that. So what we do is we look at a customer base, say, should we extend this expensive discount? If they're a magazine subscriber, what's the chances that tomorrow they'll still be a subscriber to our magazine, or are they at risk of defection? What's the probability they'll defect, leave, attrite, churn, whatever word you want to use? So let's quickly take a quick segue, 2 slides, to look at an actual predictive model for predicting churn, for predicting the loss of customer. This is based on data from Chase Bank predicting mortgage holders and which mortgage customer are they going to lose, which in the case of a mortgage means they're probably going to refinance across the street at your competing bank and then pay you all off at once. So it's kind of ironic because it's not the risk of not getting paid back. That's what risk usually means in financial context. But it's the risk of getting paid back too fast and then you don't get any of the future interest payments. But in any case, you're talking about losing a customer. And if you look at just the interest rate, it turns out that if you threshold it around 8, people with the lower interest rate have a much lower chance of defecting, of leaving. 4% versus 19%. Such a huge distinction between these 2 risk groups, just based on that one factor, right? Along the lines of those fun examples about Uber and such that I showed, where it was all about one factor. Those were simple univariate models. But ultimately, the goal, what the rocket science is for, is to learn from the data how to make that golden egg that considers more than one factor at once. So this is actually the makings of what's called a decision tree, a pretty popular analytical method. And all you do, it ends up being an upside-down tree. You're going to grow the tree down, and you're going to take these 2 segments and continue to split them according to other factors. So here is actually what's only a small excerpt of the final optimal tree according to the software. And all these decisions about how to split them was determined automatically by the machine as guided by the data. So it's like marketing segmentation, except it's done automatically according to your customer base, their responses, and according to the particular thing that you're trying to predict. It needs to be very well defined. So in this case, we're predicting, will we lose this customer in, I think it was 3 or 6 months. So what you do once you have this model is you start at the top, and those are all yes-no questions. If the answer is yes, you go left. Otherwise, you go right, and you're just going to bobble down to get to one of those endpoints, and that'll be a risk level. So this is an example of a predictive model. It's one way to do it. It's a relatively easy thing to it can get very arcane, but it's understandable to human eyes if you spend enough time reading it. It's like if-then-else statements. Other methods that compete, like neural networks and ensemble models, end up being much more black box, opaque, and harder to decipher, more formulaic and such. This is a pretty popular method of doing that. So then once we do that, we can target our retention offers, or whatever it is. Right? So those types of methods that learn from the data how to combine variables are generic. It doesn't matter what the business context is. You just have to give it the data that pertains to that business problem. So the funny thing is there's a little plot twist here that's going to happen. We switch back now to the business level, how we're using this. And let's say you're telecommunications, you're trying to keep your cell phone subscribers around. This is a common thing we're all familiar with. Many of us have experienced it. We get a brochure in the mail. You know, if you'll only renew your obligatory contract another year, then we're going to give you this free device. It turns out this has potential to backfire because the customer, who maybe felt incarcerated under her one-year obligation, the light bulb goes on over her head. She realizes, oh, this just reminded me. That must mean that my contract's going to expire soon. I'm free to defect. To the heck with the offer and even your whole service. I'm going over where my friends are or whatever. This is called a sleeping dog customer. So you need to exercise the adage, let sleeping dogs lie. Don't trigger a customer to leave who otherwise would stay. And it turns out this applies in all kinds of outgoing treatment and operations in healthcare, where you could, for certain individuals, trigger a negative outcome, and in political campaigning, right? So the Obama campaign actually, after the election, actually provided a lot of information about what happened and how it worked, including the fact that they certainly did identify sleeping dog voters. That where if a volunteer knocked on their door, you actually decrease the chance of getting their vote for your candidate and increase the chance they're going to end up voting for the opposing candidate. So these are the do not disturb customers. They were left off the lists of the campaign volunteers. Given the campaign volunteers didn't just go knock on every door in a neighborhood. They were following the addresses on the list, right? And we have every reason to assume at least that Hillary for America is doing that. We also have reason to believe that the Trump campaign is not doing it. So there's a lot of chatter about it, and I kind of summarized it in that Scientific American if you want to learn about the election stuff. In any case, another way to frame the value of this is with regard to being an antidote to information overload. So I showed that pile of business cards. You're like, which of these sales leads? You need to triage. You need to make decisions. And that's how the whole entire information economy works. This is your experience on the web. The only reason the internet provides value is because these companies do employ the same core technology, predictive modeling, learning from historical data to put probabilities in order to determine the order of Google search results. And of course, we'd be lost without that. Same thing with ordering the feed when you go onto Facebook, your news feed. Of the thousands of posts from your contacts that it could put, it's making that decision of the order based on the probability that it will engage or interest you. Mashable predicts which posts are going to go viral. Email spam filters are filtering out all that noise. Same way, same core technology. And then analogously, if you want to think about it from a consumer standpoint, that's what you're doing as far as avoiding junk mail. Junk mail is decreasing because you're receiving this direct mail because you're predicted more likely than average to respond to it. But wait, there's more. The same concept of information overload applies in choosing products. Movie recommendations, book recommendations, music recommendations. These companies, Netflix, Spotify, and Amazon, use predictive modeling, and that's the driving force behind product recommendations online. Hopper predicts which flights are going to be the cheapest for you. Airbnb orders the search results when you're choosing a property that you want to have your vacation and stay in. And Match.com will order your prospective dates according to the predicted chance of a positive outcome. So, to sort of take a quick step back before I wrap up, predictive analytics applies so much more beyond marketing and even beyond the commercial sector. Within the commercial sector, there's also fraud detection, credit risk scoring for banks and financial institutions. In government, there's all kinds of applications in law enforcement. I had an op-ed in Newsweek about the NSA's likely use of predictive analytics to target suspects for terrorism. And in healthcare, and we have a Predictive Analytics World event just for healthcare each year, which has to do with diagnosis and optimizing treatment decisions. So in general, this stuff has gained traction. It affects all of our lives every day. More and more organizations are making these decisions, millions of decisions a day, based on the output of predictive modeling, determining who to call, mail, approve, test, diagnose, warn, investigate, incarcerate, set up on a date, or medicate. Right? So I like to call this technology, predictive analytics, the latest evolutionary step of the information age, because we've moved from engineering the technology to warehouse, collect, and manage bigger and bigger amounts of data to now applying science to learn from that data, its content, what it tells us, how to make predictions in order to render all the main operations and actions we take as organizations more effective and more efficient. So in a nutshell, there's so many different ways, it's so generally applicable, there's so many different operations across sectors and across organizational functions that gain value from targeting by way of prediction. And in a nutshell, this is technology that learns from data in order to make predictions for each individual. That's what distinguishes it from forecasting, and it works because of these two effects. That is to say, it provides value because of the prediction effect, which is that a little prediction goes a long way, and the data effect, data is always predictive. So I have here a little bit of information about how you can get started and take next steps. For those of you considering being a hands-on practitioner or just want to learn more about how the technology works because your organization is going to adopt it or may deploy a trial project or what have you, we have a Predictive Analytics guide. It's, the URL is there. You can get the audio book of my book, as I mentioned, at no cost. You get the PDF, or you can just email me to request that. And also, if you're really considering getting hands-on and more technical in this stuff, I have, my book's not a how-to, it's the conceptual content of the field. But if you want more, you know, we've got articles online with all kinds of technical reading, and I have a long list, I can just email you back if you requested it, of lots of articles I've seen about how to get started with data science. So thanks for your time, and thanks for your attention, and have a great lunch.
Awesome. Thank you. I think my two favorite quotes were that prediction analytics is like a skunk with bling. I love that. And the fact that a little prediction goes a long way, because I think a lot of people do get intimidated by big data and the need to master big data. But the reality is you just got to be better than you are today. So I love that. I feel like now this Geek Rap video you have to check out. It's pretty cool. I feel like we deserve some sort of preview though. Is there any way to coax you into? Should he do a little bit? Yeah. Do you want a beatbox or something?
Yeah,
no, I can't do that.
No, you
Sorry.
have to do it.
No. I don't have a geek.
How many people want him to do the beatbox?
No. Someone has to use this microphone next.
Clap or something.
All right, I can clap. I can do that.
All right. People don't dig data. Boring's the sentiment. Crapped out by technology. Electronic excrement. But my theory is the data is experience. Serious. And deep inside the data is the key. See? Predictive analytics learns from the data you provide and predicts if you will click buy, lie, or die. It ain't astrological, it's math, it's methodological. So better pay attention because my flow is pedagogical. Thank you. Thank you.
See, it's hard to drop a lav mic, but if you had one, that would have been the spot right there. Yeah. Good job. Thank you.
Thanks. You want to do the Twitter thing?
No. Oh, yeah, the Twitter thing. The Twitter thing. Sorry.
2 copies of the book.
Sorry. Let's see. This time I'm just going to do a random one because doing the last one seems unfair.
Arbitrary?
Yeah. Not predictive at all. Okay, let's do Mrs. Courtney P. At Mrs. Courtney P. There. Okay. That's what you see right there?
Yeah.
Right in the middle? Good job. All right.
We got 2 copies.
Oh, 2 copies. Yeah. All right. How about, let's see here. Emily Barleen. Yeah, right there, right up front. Perfect.
Awesome. So there's other copies. I'll be sitting at the bookstore now for about 15 minutes. And so any questions, feel free to approach me.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. You want to go that way? All right. Fantastic.